The void of space stretched endlessly, filled with the crimson glow of 300 massive warships. Each vessel was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could turn planets into dust. The Valtharan Empire had assembled their greatest fleet here at the edge of known space, a wall of death and destruction that had never known defeat. Fleet Admiral Cromax stood tall on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty Devastator. His scaled hands gripped the command rail as he surveyed his armada through the massive viewports. Purple blood coursed through his veins with excitement. Today would be another easy victory, another species crushed beneath Valtharan might. "Sir, long-range sensors are picking up something," called out his tactical officer from across the bridge. The young Valtharan's voice carried a hint of confusion. "What is it?" Cromax demanded, his yellow eyes narrowing. "An unknown fleet approaching." "Our position. They're still several light hours away, but we're getting clear readings." Cromax's mandibles clicked together in anticipation, another foolish species daring to challenge the Empire. "How many ships?" The tactical officer checked his displays twice before answering. 12, sir, just 12 vessels." The bridge fell silent for a moment before erupting in harsh, guttural laughter. Cromax's own booming voice rose above the rest. 12 ships? Against our 300. He wiped tears from his eyes. This has to be some kind of joke. His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Vorthak, stepped forward. "Perhaps they're coming to surrender without a fight. Save us the ammunition. Or maybe they're completely insane," another officer suggested, causing fresh waves of laughter. Cromax activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice boomed across all 300 ships. "Attention, warriors of the Valtharan Empire. We have visitors approaching our position. 12 tiny vessels that apparently think they can challenge our might. Prepare for the shortest battle in galactic history." Cheers and war cries echoed back through the comm system. Weapon systems began powering up across the massive fleet, their energy signatures painting space in deadly hues. Meanwhile, billions of kilometers away, a very different scene was playing out aboard the human vessel Resilience. The ship was sleek and dark, its hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. No bigger than a Valtharan cruiser, it seemed insignificant compared to the approaching enemy fleet. Captain Park Ji-won sat quietly in his command chair, his dark eyes focused on the tactical displays surrounding him. Unlike the chaotic Valtharan bridge, the human command center was a study in calm efficiency. 43 crew members worked at their stations with practiced precision, their movements economical and purposeful. "Captain, we're receiving updated intelligence on the Valtharan fleet," reported Commander Lee Mina from her position at the sensor station. Her fingers danced across holographic controls with fluid grace. 312 vessels confirmed, all heavy combat units. Ji-won nodded slowly. "Their fleet composition, standard Valtharan doctrine, dreadnoughts in the center, cruisers on the flanks, destroyers screening the formation. They're using formation pattern Delta 7, just like our simulations predicted. At the navigation station, Lieutenant Kim Sora looked up from her displays. "Captain, the other 11 ships are reporting ready status. All systems green across the fleet." "Excellent." Ji-won's voice remained steady, despite the overwhelming odds they faced. He touched a control on his armrest, opening a channel to the other human vessels. "Captains, this is Ji-won. We've trained for this moment our entire lives. Earth's colonies are counting on us to prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars." The responses came back one by one from the other ship commanders. Captain Choi Hyun-woo of the Vengeance, Commander Yoon Dae-ho of the Retribution, Captain Oh Seung-jin of the Determination, and 8 others. Each voice carried the same quiet confidence, the same unshakable determination. "Remember," Ji-won continued, "we're not here to match their firepower. We're here to prove that intelligence beats brute force, that skill trumps size. They see 12 small ships, we know better." He closed the channel and leaned back in his chair. Around him, his crew continued their preparations with methodical precision. They weren't rushing or panicking despite facing impossible odds. These were professionals who had spent years training for this exact scenario. Commander Lee Mina approached his chair. "Sir, should I begin the final system checks?" "Yes, but keep our energy signatures low." Let them think we're just another primitive species stumbling into their territory. Ji-won's lips curved in a slight smile. We want them confident and careless. As the distance between the two fleets continued to shrink, the contrast couldn't have been starker. The Valtharans celebrated their coming victory with loud boasts and crude jokes. They saw easy prey, another weak species to crush beneath their boots. The humans worked in focused silence, their every action precise and calculated. They carried with them the hopes of Earth's scattered colonies and something the galaxy had never seen before. In their cargo holds lay weapons and technologies that would rewrite the rules of space warfare forever. The stage was set for a confrontation that would echo across the stars for generations to come. The massive Valtharan flagship cut through space like a blade, its crimson hull gleaming with the light of 1,000 weapon systems. Admiral Cromax stood on his command deck, watching the tactical displays as the 12 tiny human ships continued their approach. His officers buzzed around him, their excitement building as the distance between the fleets shrank. "Sir, we're now in communication range," reported his communications officer, a young Valtharan whose scales still held the bright sheen of youth. Cromax's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. "Excellent. Open a channel to those pathetic vessels. Let's give them one chance to surrender before we turn them into space dust." The communication array hummed to life, broadcasting across all frequencies. Cromax's voice boomed through the void, carried by subspace transmitters that could reach across star systems. "Unknown vessels, you are trespassing in sovereign Valtharan space. I am Fleet Admiral Cromax of the Imperial Navy. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded, or face complete annihilation." The bridge fell silent as they waited for a response. Most of the officers expected either terrified pleading or complete radio silence as the aliens fled in panic. What they got instead surprised them. A calm, measured voice came through the speakers with crystal clarity. "This is Captain Park Ji-won of the Terran Defense Force vessel Resilience. We are peaceful explorers seeking safe passage through your territory under established interstellar law." The Valtharan bridge erupted in harsh laughter. The very idea of these tiny ships making demands was beyond ridiculous. Cromax wiped tears. From his yellow eyes, his whole body shaking with mirth. "Peaceful explorers," he gasped between laughs. "Safe passage? You face the might of 300 warships with your pathetic dozen toys, and you speak of interstellar law." His voice turned cold and menacing. "I'll tell you what the law is here, alien. The strong rule, and the weak submit or die. Aboard." The human flagship Resilience, Captain Ji-won listened to the Valtharan's response with no change in expression. His bridge crew continued their work with quiet efficiency, their hands moving across control panels with practiced precision. Commander, Lee Mina monitored the enemy communications from her station, her equipment recording every transmission. "Captain," she said quietly, "I'm picking up internal Valtharan communications. They're placing bets on how quickly they can destroy us. Current odds are 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Lieutenant Kim Sora looked up from her navigation console. "Sir, they're not taking us seriously at all. Their formation hasn't even shifted to combat readiness." Ji-won nodded slightly. "Perfect. The more confident they are, the more careless they'll become." He activated his communication system again. "Admiral Cromax, we have no quarrel with your empire. There we simply wish to pass through this sector of space peacefully. Surely an accommodation can be reached." The response came back immediately, filled with contempt. "Accommodation? You amuse me, human. Here's my final offer. Surrender now and die quickly or resist and die slowly. Those are your only choices." Back on the Valtharan flagship, Admiral Cromax was enjoying himself immensely. His officers crowded around him, all eager to watch the coming slaughter. The human ships were so small compared to their massive dreadnoughts that it would be like watching giants step on insects. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "should we move to attack formation?" "Why bother?" Cromax waved dismissively. "We could destroy them with a single ship. This will be target practice for our gunners." He opened the fleet channel again. "All ships maintain current formation. When I give the word, we'll show these aliens what real firepower looks like." Meanwhile, the human ships continued their steady approach, their energy signatures remaining mysteriously low. To Valtharan sensors, They appeared to be running on minimal power, like ships barely maintaining life support. What the aliens didn't realize was that the humans were conducting the most sophisticated scanning operation in galactic history. Every human vessel was equipped with sensor arrays that could analyze enemy weapons down to the molecular level. They recorded shield frequencies, weapon charge rates, targeting system response times, and communication protocols. Commander Lee Mina watched data streams flowing across her displays, building a complete picture of Valtharan military capabilities. "Captain," she whispered, "we're getting excellent readings on their entire fleet. Their shield harmonics follow a predictable pattern, and their targeting computers have a consistent delay of 0.3 seconds between lock-on and firing. Their formation is standard textbook deployment," added Lieutenant Kim Sora. "No creativity, no adaptation for fighting smaller vessels. They're fighting like they expect us to line up and trade shots." Captain G1 allowed himself a small smile. "They're about to learn that humans don't fight fair. We fight smart." Admiral Cromax's patience finally ran out. "Enough of this nonsense. I'll give you one final demonstration of Valtharan power." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target that asteroid cluster at coordinate 77 Mark IV, full power blast from the main cannon. The flagship's primary weapon system charged with a sound like thunder. Energy built up in the massive barrel until it glowed white-hot. Then, with a flash that lit up half the star system, a beam of pure destruction lanced out and completely vaporized 3 massive asteroids. "That," Cromax announced with satisfaction, "is what awaits your pitiful fleet. Final warning, surrender or share that asteroid's fate." The human response came back calm and unchanged. "We respectfully decline, Admiral. We will continue on our current course." The Valtharan bridge fell silent with shock. These aliens had just watched enough firepower to crack a moon, and they were still refusing to surrender. It was beyond their understanding. What they didn't know was that the humans had recorded every detail of that weapon discharge, analyzing its power output, charging time, and targeting characteristics. The demonstration hadn't intimidated them. It had given them exactly the intelligence they needed. The pieces were now in place for a battle that would change galactic history forever. Admiral Cromax's patience finally snapped like a frayed cable. His massive fist slammed down on the command console, sending vibrations through the entire bridge. The time for games was over. These arrogant humans had ignored his warnings, dismissed his show of force, and somehow had the nerve to continue, approaching his fleet as if they owned the galaxy. "Enough," he roared, his voice echoing through the command center. "All ships, battle stations, open fire on those pathetic vessels and turn them into cosmic dust." The order rippled through the Valtharan fleet like wildfire. 300 massive warships activated their weapon systems simultaneously, creating an energy signature so powerful it could be detected from neighboring star systems. Plasma cannons charged with deadly hums, missile tubes loaded with planet killer, warheads and beam weapons that could slice through battleship armor began tracking their tiny targets. The first salvo was beyond devastating. Hundreds of energy beams lanced through space, each one capable of vaporizing a city. Plasma bolts, the size of buildings, streaked toward the human fleet, trailing fire and radiation. The very fabric of space seemed to tear as concentrated destruction filled the void between the two forces. But something impossible happened. The human ships didn't explode into brilliant fireballs as expected. They didn't even try to flee in panic. Instead, they began to move in ways that defied every law of space combat the Valtharans knew. Lieutenant Kim Sora gripped the controls of her ship, the Defiance, with steady hands. Around her, space exploded in a deadly light show as Valtharan weapons created a wall of destruction. But she had trained for this moment her entire life. Her ship twisted and rolled through the barrage, with movements so precise they seemed choreographed. Threading. "The needle," she whispered to herself, guiding her vessel through a gap between 2 massive plasma bolts that missed her hull by mere meters. The heat from the weapons was so intense it would have fried any normal pilot. But Kim's ship was equipped with advanced cooling systems that kept her alive in the inferno. Back on the Resilience, Captain G1 watched the tactical display with calm focus. The Valtharan attack looked overwhelming to anyone else, but to his trained eye it revealed critical weaknesses. "Commander Lee, are you tracking their firing patterns?" "Yes, sir," Lee Mina replied, her fingers dancing over sensor controls. Just as predicted, they're firing in waves, standard doctrine. 0.3-second delay between target lock and weapon discharge across their entire fleet. Perfect. Signal the fleet. Initiate pattern Omega-7. The 12 human ships suddenly split apart like flower petals opening. What had been a tight formation became 3 separate groups, each moving with fluid precision through the deadly space around them. The Valtharans had expected their enemies to either run away or charge straight into their guns. They hadn't prepared for opponents who fought like dancers. Captain Choi Hyunwoo aboard the Vengeance called out targeting solutions to his weapons officer. "Mark enemy ships 7 through 12. I want clean shots on their shield generators, not their main hulls. We disable. We don't destroy." His ship slipped between 2 Valtharan dreadnoughts like a fish swimming through coral. The massive alien vessels were so focused on trying to track the other human ships that they created blind spots in their own formation. Hyunwoo exploited every gap, every moment of confusion. The Valtharan gunners were growing frustrated. Their targeting computers kept losing lock on the human ships, which moved in ways that seemed to predict where the weapons would fire before they even charged up. It was as if the humans could see the future. "Sir, we can't get a clean shot," reported the weapons officer on Chromax's flagship. "They're moving through our formation like they know exactly where we're going to aim." "Impossible," Chromax snarled. "They're just lucky. Keep firing." But luck had nothing to do with it. The humans had spent decades studying Valtharan military tactics, analyzing every battle recording they could find. They knew these aliens fought with brute force and predictable patterns. Every move the Valtharans made had been anticipated and countered before the battle even began. Commander Yoon Daiho piloted his ship, the Retribution, through a particularly dense cluster of enemy vessels. His craft rolled and spun through the chaos, avoiding weapons fire that came within centimeters of his hull. But he wasn't just running, he was positioning himself for the perfect shot. "Target acquired," he announced calmly. "Firing." The human. Weapons were nothing like the massive, obvious cannons of their enemies. When they fired, it was with surgical precision. Beams of coherent energy lanced out and struck specific points on Valtharan ships, shield generators, sensor arrays, weapon control systems. The aliens found their mighty warships suddenly going blind and defenseless. "What's happening to our ships?" demanded Chromax, as damage reports flooded his command center. "How are they hitting us when we can't even target them properly?" The answer came from Captain Oh Sungjin aboard the Determination. His ship performed a maneuver that should have been impossible, a complete reversal of direction at full speed that would have turned any normal crew into paste against their bulkheads. But human technology had advanced far beyond what the galaxy knew. The 12 human ships had become something the Valtharans had never encountered before, a pack of predators hunting among their massive fleet. Each vessel moved independently, but in perfect coordination with the others, like fingers of the same hand. They struck where the enemy was weakest, vanished when return fire came their way, and reappeared somewhere completely unexpected. Space had become a deadly dance, and the humans were leading every step. The Valtharan fleet, for all its size and power, was being carved apart by opponents who understood that in warfare, intelligence always beats raw strength. The galaxy was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating humanity. The tide of battle shifted in ways that Admiral Chromax had never experienced in his 40 years of warfare. What started as what should have been a simple extermination had become something far more terrifying. His massive fleet, the pride of the Valtharan Empire, was being systematically torn apart by 12 ships that shouldn't have posed any threat at all. "Sir, we've lost another cruiser," his tactical officer called out, panic creeping into his voice. "The humans disabled its engines and left it drifting." Chromax stared at his tactical display in growing horror. Red warning lights blinked across the hologram, each one representing a ship in his fleet that had been crippled, not destroyed. The humans seemed to take some twisted pleasure in leaving his vessels alive but helpless, floating dead in space, like broken toys. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. 47 disabled, sir. And we still haven't managed to land a single solid hit on any of their vessels." The Admiral's scaled hands trembled with rage and something he hadn't felt in decades, fear. These weren't the desperate last gasps of a dying species. This was something else entirely. The humans were hunting his fleet like predators stalking prey. Commander Yundeho's ship, the Retribution, had just completed another impossible maneuver. His vessel seemed to fold space around itself, appearing behind a cluster of Valtharan destroyers that had been trying to corner him. But instead of running, he had become the one doing the cornering. "Deploying microdrone swarm," he announced calmly to his crew. The ship's hull opened like a mechanical flower, releasing thousands of tiny machines that were invisible to Valtharan sensors. Each drone was no bigger than a grain of rice, but they carried technology that would have seemed like magic to most species in the galaxy. The microscopic swarm spread out through space, slipping through Valtharan shields as if they weren't even there. The enemy's defensive systems were designed to stop massive projectiles and energy beams, not clouds of tiny machines that moved like living things. Within minutes, the drones had attached themselves to hull sections across dozens of enemy ships. "What are those things doing to our vessels?" demanded a Valtharan captain over the communication system. His ship was shaking as the tiny machines burrowed into critical systems, disrupting power flow and scrambling computer networks. "Unknown, sir," came the panicked reply. "Our technicians can't even detect them properly. It's like our ships are being eaten from the inside." Meanwhile, Captain Oh Sungjin piloted the Determination through a section of space that should have been certain death. 3 Valtharan dreadnoughts had him boxed in on all sides, their massive weapons charging for what should have been an easy kill. But humans had learned to use the enemy's size against them. "Activating gravity manipulation," he called out to his crew. The Determination's hull began to shimmer with an energy field that bent space-time itself. The ship suddenly accelerated in a direction that physics said was impossible, sliding sideways through space, as if the laws of the universe didn't apply to it. The Valtharan weapons fired at empty space, while the human vessel appeared somewhere completely different. "Sir, that's impossible," gasped Chromax's science officer. "No ship can move like that." "Clearly they can," the Admiral replied grimly. "What else don't we know about these humans?" The question was answered when the human fleet began to reveal its true nature. Hull panels that had appeared to be simple armor plating slid back to expose weapon arrays that defied classification. Energy signatures that had been barely detectable suddenly spiked to levels that made Valtharan sensors scream warnings. Captain Park Jiwon stood on the bridge of the Resilience, watching his tactical display with satisfaction. Every move the AI Valtharans made had been predicted and countered. Their formations, their tactics, their weapon systems, all of it had been studied and understood long before this battle began. "Commander Lee, status report," he requested calmly. "All ships operating at optimal efficiency, sir," she replied. "Enemy fleet effectiveness has dropped to 37%. We're ready to begin Phase 3 of the operation." "Excellent. Signal all vessels, weapons free. Show them what we're really capable of." The 12 human ships suddenly unleashed their full power. Beams of coherent energy that could cut through battleship armor like paper lanced out with perfect accuracy. Each shot found its target with surgical precision, disabling specific systems rather than simply destroying everything in sight. Lieutenant Kim Sora's ship, the Defiance, demonstrated technology that made the Valtharans question everything they thought they knew about warfare. Her vessel split into 3 separate sections, each one operating independently while remaining connected by invisible energy fields. What had been 1 ship was now 3, tripling her ability to attack and defend. "Impossible," whispered Chromax as he watched the tactical display. "Ships don't work that way, matter doesn't work that way." But the humans weren't bound by what others thought was possible. They had spent centuries pushing the boundaries of science and technology, driven by a curiosity and determination that other species couldn't match. Every human ship was a floating laboratory, crewed by individuals who viewed the impossible as just another problem to solve. The Valtharan fleet, once the terror of known space, found itself being dissected by masters of warfare who fought like no one they had ever encountered. Size meant nothing when facing opponents who could predict every move, counter every strategy, and turn the hunter into the hunted. Space had become humanity's hunting ground, and the galaxy was learning to fear the species from the small blue. Planet, the proud flagship of the Valtheran Empire, shuddered like a wounded beast as human weapons systematically dismantled its defenses. Admiral Cromax gripped his command chair as emergency lighting bathed the bridge in angry red light. Sparks flew from damaged consoles while his crew scrambled to contain fires and system failures throughout the massive vessel. "Damage report," he barked, though he could already see the devastation on his tactical displays. "Sir, main engines are offline," his engineering officer reported, his voice shaking. "Weapons systems are operating at 12% capacity. Life support is failing on decks 7 through 15. And, sir, we're detecting similar damage across the entire fleet." Cromax stared at the holographic display showing his once mighty armada. What had been 300 gleaming warships just hours ago was now a graveyard of drifting hulks. Most were still intact, but completely powerless, their crews trapped. Inside metal coffins floating through the void. "How many ships are still operational?" he asked quietly. "Fewer than 30, sir, and those are barely functioning." The Admiral closed his eyes and tried to understand how this had happened. His fleet had faced overwhelming odds before and emerged victorious. They had crushed rebellions, conquered entire star systems, and made the Valtharan name feared across the galaxy. Yet 12 small ships had reduced his armada to scrap metal. Captain Park Ji-won's voice crackled through the communication system, as calm and measured as it had been at the beginning of this nightmare. "Admiral Cromax, your fleet is defeated. We are prepared to offer terms for your surrender." "Terms?" Cromax laughed bitterly. "You speak of terms after destroying my fleet?" "We haven't destroyed anything, Admiral. Look at your casualty reports." Cromax frowned and checked his tactical display more carefully. It was true. While his ships were disabled and drifting, actual casualties were remarkably low. The humans had somehow managed to cripple 300 warships while killing fewer than 1,000 crew members. It should have been impossible. "You could have wiped us out completely," he realized aloud. "Yes," came Ji-won's simple reply, "but that wasn't our objective." On the bridge of the Resilience, Captain Ji-won stood before his main display, watching the aftermath of the battle. His 12 ships moved through the debris field like shepherds among scattered sheep, ensuring that disabled Valtharan vessels weren't in immediate danger of collision or life support failure. "Commander Lee, begin wideband transmission to all galactic frequencies," he ordered. "Channel open, sir." Ji-won took a deep breath. This moment would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. "This is Captain Park Ji-won of the Terran Defense Force, speaking for all of humanity. Today, 12 ships of Earth have defeated the largest fleet in known space. We did not come here seeking conquest or glory. We came to deliver a message." Throughout the galaxy, millions of species listened as the transmission spread across communication networks. In council chambers, military headquarters, and civilian homes, beings of every description stopped what they were doing to hear the words of this new species that had just rewritten the rules of warfare. "For too long," Ji-won continued, "strength has been measured by the size of one's fleet, the power of one's weapons, the fear one can inspire in others. Today we prove that intelligence, preparation, and unity are worth more than all the dreadnoughts ever built." Admiral Cromax listened from his ruined bridge, beginning to understand the true scope of what had happened. "You weren't trying to win a battle," he said over the communication channel. "You were gathering intelligence." "Exactly," Ji-won replied. "For months, we've watched and learned from every major power in the galaxy. We've studied your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. This battle wasn't about defeating the Valtharan Empire. It was about proving that humanity deserves its place among the stars." Commander Lee Mina stepped forward with a datapad. "Sir, we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Confederation is requesting immediate diplomatic contact. The Crystalline Assembly has issued a statement recognizing human sovereignty. Even the Void Hunters are asking for a non-aggression pact." Captain Choi Hyunwoo's voice came over the fleet communication system. "Captain, We're also detecting massive fleet movements from several species. It looks like everyone wants to either ally with us or make sure they're not on our bad side." Jiwon nodded with satisfaction. Fear wasn't the goal, but respect was necessary for survival in this dangerous galaxy. "Admiral Chromax, here are our terms. Your surviving ships will be allowed to depart unharmed. In return, the Valtharan Empire will recognize human territorial claims and establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth." "And if we refuse?" Chromax asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then we demonstrate that disabling your fleet was us being merciful." The Admiral looked around his shattered bridge at his defeated crew. Pride warred with pragmatism in his mind, but the choice was clear. "The Valtharan Empire accepts your terms." As the human fleet prepared to depart, Captain Jiwon addressed his crew one final time. "Today we've shown the galaxy that humanity won't be ignored or pushed around, but more importantly, we've proven that brains beat brawn every time." Lieutenant Kim Sora looked up from her navigation console. "Sir, where to next?" "Home," Jiwon replied with a smile. "Earth's colonies need to hear that the galaxy now knows we're here to stay." The 12 ships that had been mocked as insignificant toys began their journey back to human space, leaving behind a galaxy that would never again underestimate the species from the small blue planet. Word spread quickly through every communication network. Humanity had arrived, and they fought like no one had ever seen before. In bars and meeting halls across thousands of worlds, the story was told and retold. 12 ships had defeated 300. David had slain Goliath once again, and the universe would never be the same. The age of human expansion had begun, and the stars themselves seemed to welcome Earth's children home.